Okay. Welcome to the New Jersey Association for College Admission Counseling, virtual college fair. This is going to be a panel. And so you're going to hear from an expert, one of our panelists, Jenny, and she's going to talk to you and give you some information about her institution and of course, the topic at hand. A few things that I want to talk about before we dive into her presentation. If you are watching this live, your camera and your microphone are off, so our panelists cannot hear or see you. So if you'd like to ask a question, and they are certainly encouraged, please ask questions. You can use that Q&A button that's either at the bottom or the top of your screen. So that Q&A button is going to be very helpful. You can ask a question anytime throughout this, and it's totally up to Jenny whether she wants to answer during or all at the end. But either way, please click that button and ask away. When this is all done, you are going to be leaving and there'll be a 5-question survey. That's incredibly helpful to us. And there are more sessions available, the same place you signed up for this one, in a recording of this, everything in the chat will also be available at strivescan.com/New Jersey. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Jenny, who is going to share her screen and give her presentation.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to get my PowerPoint up. Welcome. Thanks for joining me tonight. My name is Jenny NJACAC. I am an admissions counselor at the College of New Jersey. So you'll see in my virtual background here, this is actually the social sciences building on our campus. So I definitely recommend coming to visit if you can, because it is gorgeous, especially within the fall. And I'm really excited to be talking to you today about the holistic application process. That's probably a buzzword that you're hearing a lot as you're looking at institutions. And while it may be a word that may not be fully transparent to you right now, I'm going to talk much more about what it means. I want to tell you that hearing a school takes a holistic application process, right, takes a holistic approach is important, is wonderful. It's a really good thing for you. And I'm going to talk about why it's a good thing for you. Feel free to put questions in the chat as I talk about the holistic admissions process. I'm going to get to those at the end, and we can kind of just really focus on what the holistic admissions process is. But essentially, a holistic admissions process means that every element of your application matters, right? So for some schools, the major to which you're applying might matter. The transcript will obviously matter, right? If you're applying as a first-year student, your high school transcript matters a lot. Applying as a transfer student, your high school transcript and your college transcripts matter a lot. But what's important is that every element is contextualized and considered in relation to the others. So what that means is that you can be really strategic about your application process, right? If there's one element of your application that you feel could be strengthened, right? And you're particularly stronger in another area, maybe your extracurricular activities, right? You have a lot of leadership. That might propel you to then upload an additional resume or additional documentation that really highlights the kind of leadership development and the kind of leadership projects you took part in as a high school student. So every element matters, and all the elements are talking to each other, right? And because every element matters, no element is the end all be all. So, I mean, oftentimes students will tell me, you know, my sophomore year on my transcript just wasn't that strong, right? Does that mean that I shouldn't apply to TCNJ, or I shouldn't apply to a school that takes a holistic admissions approach? And the answer is you should still absolutely apply, right? But think about ways that you can address any element of your application that you find can be strengthened, right? One, and then two, to really play to your strengths. What I do want to highlight here, though, is that while no element is the end all be all, some elements may be more important than others. So for instance, at TCNJ, the transcript is definitely the most important element during the application process, right? That's not to say that other elements can't give us a different academic lens on you, but the transcript is certainly a very important part of our application review process. And what's good about a holistic admissions process, right? A school that's looking at your transcript, that's looking at your extracurricular activity resume, letters of recommendation, your essay, and even sometimes demonstrated interest, TCNJ takes that into account, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We get a full picture of who you are, right? Your application becomes both your academic and your personal journey. It tells us a story about you. And so the reasons why holistic admissions processes can be particularly strategic for the applicant is that you have the opportunity to consider your strengths and play to them. So what I mean by this is that you can really take advantage of the fact that you know your experiences and you know the ones that are particularly strong. So like that example I gave previously, if leadership is one of those experiences that is especially strong for you, play that up, right? Give us documents that are certainly going to buttress that fact. And because, we're encouraging you to use those elements strategically, you also have the opportunity to think about how you can offset any of the weaker elements on your application, right? So one of the big questions now is, when should I submit test scores? And while I'll talk about this a little bit more specifically in an upcoming slide, it's important to think about what you're submitting your test scores for, right? What purpose do you want these test scores to serve? For instance, maybe if you're applying as an engineering major and your transcript does not speak to a strong academic background in mathematics, but you did study really hard for the SATs and you did particularly well in math, it might be a good idea to submit those scores, right? Particularly if it's a strong score, because that'll help admissions folks understand that you certainly have those mathematical capabilities. Moreover, schools that practice a holistic admissions process often encourage students to take advantage of opportunities to submit other kinds of documents. So for instance, after you apply to most colleges, you actually receive something called an application portal, right, for an individual school. And within this portal, you can upload additional documents. And you have a lot more autonomy in this, right? You might be required, of course, to submit a transcript, letters of recommendation, your extracurricular activity resume, but maybe you also sing and you would like to submit a video recording of you performing at Carnegie Hall or something like that, right? There's other ways in which you can demonstrate, one, your interest in the school by supplying additional documents, but two, you're providing more context and content of who you are as an applicant, right? We're seeing well-rounded interests, we're seeing your different talents. And lastly, a lot of schools are paying attention to what kind of interest you're showing in the institution. So especially if a school is one of your top choice schools, it's a good idea to start showing interest, right? And showing interest can range from attending events like this to emailing counselors. It can be wide ranging depending on how the school defines it. But schools that take a holistic admissions approach might actually be taking the fact that you're interested in them into consideration. So what that means too is that there will be opportunities throughout the application process to show your interest, right? If a school offers interviews, hop on that, right? You want to make sure you're scheduling an interview that you'll be prepared for and ready for and enjoy. If a school doesn't offer interviews, they often offer additional open-ended questions, right? TCNJ, for example, offers additional open-ended questions that we want students to value and see as an interview opportunity. And so in thinking about how most colleges are moving to test optional, right? Test optional admissions processes, students have one of two reactions. They're either very excited about this, and you really should be, because it is all about making the admissions process that much more accessible for students. So they're either excited or, they're a bit nervous, right? Which rightfully so, right? Well, what does it mean then if an element of my application is missing, right? And so what holistic application processes does is it makes a pie chart of your application. This is what I always tell students. Your application becomes a pie chart. And if your test scores aren't a part of that pie chart, what happens is that every element grows in significance. So you are not missing any element. Your pie isn't incomplete. It's simply that all the other elements are just a little bit more important. And so how TCNJ is talking about the application process is that, one, the transcript is really the best indicator of academic performance at the college level. And most schools that are going test optional agree with this statement. And of course, the other elements of your application provide a better idea of also how you'll lead on campus, how you'll become socially acclimated to the school. Is the school a good fit for you, right? But particularly in regards to academics, test scores are not the best indicator of a student's academic capability. And so with schools being test optional, it's important to remember that you do not need to submit test scores. If you have a strong transcript, particularly in the context of TCNJ, we're seeing strong test scores as simply a confirmation of an already strong transcript. But we're also seeing test scores, and we encourage students to use test scores to offset any weaker element of their application, right? Especially the transcript. So for instance, if you're applying to TCNJ as a business major, and you haven't had the opportunity to take any kind of mathematical courses, right? Analytical courses in regards to mathematics, having a strong math test score might support that, right? And give us another element to consider for you in regards to your academics. Similarly, I know that students are apprehensive in particular about how they're going to be represented this year, as COVID-19 has certainly created a kind of interruption or change or whatever word you want to use to your academic experience, right? And so what's really important, I think now more than ever, is for you to connect with the people that are writing your letters of recommendation and to connect with them in such a way that you should feel empowered to say, this is the experience that I'd really like you to highlight in the letter that you're writing for me, right? Counselors, advisors, professors, teachers, what have you, they will be delighted to hear that. And particularly if there is a weak spot on your transcript, it really speaks volumes to us when the teacher, who you might not have done the best in the class in, that when that teacher writes you a letter of recommendation and can speak to your growth, can speak to your resilience, and the ways that you attempted to really support yourself in that academic area throughout that time together. So it's important to connect with a teacher, especially if you struggled in a subject, because that gives us a really good idea of your character, as well as your commitment to being a scholar. I also tell students too, and encourage students, a lot of schools will take recommendation letters outside of the school. So yes, a lot of schools will want to see one from a counselor, one from a teacher, but you can also feel free to ask an employer, an organization leader that you've worked very closely with. A lot of schools who take a holistic admissions approach are more than happy to welcome another perspective on you. So there are ways in which you can sort of have some power even over your letters of recommendation. Additionally, your essay, right, is an important element that allows counselors to really contextualize you, right, in thinking about your application and you as a student. But what I always tell students is that we learn so much about you from your application, right? We know your academic strengths. We know how you've led throughout your high school career. We know what kinds of employment you had. We know, we hear from people who know you. You want your essay to be something new, to really be something new. And it's also important to prioritize you and your story. So it's very common for students to write essays on experiences that impacted them. It's also common for students to write about family members or people that have largely impacted them. But what's important about the essay is that we do want to see reflection, right? We want to see the way, yes, that experience happened or you grew with that person, but what impact it had on you. So essays that really distinguish themselves are ones that are, one, telling us something new, and two, are the student's story. Additionally, it's important to remember that there are other ways that you can communicate information to an admissions counselor, right? So at TCNJ, we are incredibly friendly, one, and we are also incredibly transparent. So if you send me an email after submitting your application and it provides some additional information that you'd like to be taken into consideration. I mean, students have emailed me because they weren't able to take an additional AP class because the scheduling only allowed them to do such and such, right? Sometimes it's as little as that. Other times, maybe it's more of a personal experience that really impacted their academic time, right? And their academic performance. At TCNJ, you can certainly just let us know that and we'll upload that information right to your portal. But there's also an additional information section on the Common App and the Coalition for Colleges application. So within that additional information section, you should feel empowered to include any context to experiences that may have impacted your academic experience, right? So if maybe you were taking care of a family member for a long period of time and that prevented you from being involved in anything, that's important for us to know. It's important information for us to know. And that's a good space to place that information. Additionally, most applications will likely have a question that asks you, if applicable, right, how COVID-19 has impacted your academic experience, or if there's anything in relation to COVID-19 that you would like the admissions counselor reviewing your application to know. And I think that this is important, right, because while it's certainly fine for a student's essay to be somewhat related to the pandemic, right, this has been an incredible time. Just know that there will be other opportunities to communicate that information right on the Common App, right? So your essay can certainly be about you and highlight your personal experience, highlight a personal relationship, right? And then of course, there will be space to talk about the impact of COVID-19. So be strategic, right, in communicating the information that's important about you as an applicant. Additionally, right, demonstrated interest, I think is really important right now, particularly because there are so many different ways to connect with institutions, right? And many colleges track your interest, and the definition of interest can be incredibly expansive, right? So for some schools, they may only count interest as attending an open house or attending an on-campus admissions presentation and tour. But at TCNJ, we consider you attending a virtual event, of which we have many, right? Attending in-person events, connecting with the rep at a fair or at an event like this, and even emailing us, right? So anytime a student emails me, I make sure that that's a part of their applicant profile so that, one, I'm aware of correspondence I've had with them previously, and two, it really shows the evolution of a student's interest in TCNJ. So this is particularly important too if you're looking at majors that tend to be more competitive at institutions, right? So one, if you're looking at a school that is particularly competitive, it is a good idea to show you're interested in that school. But two, if you're looking at a school that has some majors that are more competitive than others, it's certainly important to show interest, because showing that interest will help distinguish applicants that are very similar in academic profile and leadership experiences, right? To give you an example, TCNJ's nursing major is our most competitive major at the college right now. It's incredibly competitive, and we receive so many great applications of students who are just amazing, right? But what makes a student stand out is how they've engaged with TCNJ. And particularly, a lot of schools will also have a question on the Common App that says, why us, right? Why TCNJ? Why Rutgers University? And students who take the time to, make that answer a personal one, right? Make it one that is not obviously a copy and paste sort of replica, right, of each answer. Those are the students that are going to distinguish themselves in an incredibly competitive applicant pool, and particularly when that applicant pool is for a competitive major. So interest is something that you have a lot of control over. It's something that's incredibly accessible right now with the advent of virtual opportunities. And it's an easy way to get your name out there in thinking about a school. And so just to kind of put this into context at the College of New Jersey, these are all of the elements that we require for a first-year student, right? So when you apply, we do ask you to pick a primary or secondary major, right? So we are looking at you in the context of your major. And we are using that as a tool to really see, one, what you're interested in, and two, we really only use a secondary major for students who don't make it to the final round for our 7-year accelerated medical program interviews, or unfortunately do not pass their portfolio or audition requirement for our music and art majors. And so the primary major, right, should be what you're passionate about, should be what you want to study. And particularly when we're looking at the transcript, because we take a holistic approach, we're looking at your transcript in tandem with your high school profile, right? So we're looking at, yes, what rigorous courses you've taken, but we're also looking at what kinds of rigorous courses were available to you, right? If you're coming from a high school that only has 2 AP classes and you took both of them, that looks awesome to us, right? And we're not going to compare you to another student who's coming from a high school with over 20 AP course offerings. So it's important to note that a holistic approach usually also implies that it's contextual. So we're looking at your profile, we're looking at your transcript. Additionally, because we are looking at you through the lens of your major, we are looking to see what courses you've taken to best prepare you to study that academic area, right? If you're applying as a mathematics major, we definitely want to see what kinds of rigorous mathematics courses you've taken throughout high school, and particularly how you have increasingly challenged yourself over the years, right? We do take very strongly into consideration demonstrated interest. So at the end of this, I will certainly put our admissions visit link in the chat. But I highly encourage you, for any school that you're interested in, definitely attend at least one event, right? Whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, because it's just such an easy thing, right? You can kind of just log onto your laptop, maybe it's in the morning, you have a cup of coffee, and you can learn about the college that you might be interested in. This is also very helpful for you because it's by engaging with counselors and stepping foot on campuses that you realize what you want in a college. So yes, you may be showing interest, but you're also figuring out what is most important to you. What is your priority in a college education? Is it a small class size? Is it a suburban campus? Is it an urban campus? Those things you start to find, you can start to find what's most important. We also require an extracurricular activity list or resume. And I think that students feel a lot of pressure to have, been the president of this and the leader of that. But in particular at TCNJ, we want to just see what you care about, what has been passionate to you, right? What has made you feel passionate? And particularly if you've had a long-standing involvement in certain organizations, that really sticks out to us because it shows a commitment, and it shows that you are dedicated to that passion. We do require 2 to 3 letters of recommendation. We typically expect one from a counselor or a teacher and another, from a counselor or a teacher. But if you'd like to submit a third one, we always encourage students to go outside the school. We're more than happy to take another teacher, but we're also more than happy to take an employer, right? To take a letter of recommendation from an organization leader. We're really excited about new perspectives about you as a person, right? We learn so much about students as students. So we're more than happy to hear about you as a person. And then lastly, of course, we require the application essay. And, just to speak in general about the essay, there are so many different prompts for the application, right? For the Common App and Coalition App essay, that you have a lot of agency in what you want to write about. So take that opportunity, right? Start writing, and start thinking about experiences that you think really speak to who you are as a person. What I love to highlight as well is that we really spend time, as I think you could tell from this presentation at the College of New Jersey, we spend time really evaluating every element of your application. So your essays, your letters of recommendation, everything that you send to us is considered and it's read. So hearing a holistic approach from colleges that you're looking at is a good thing. And it's an especially good thing if you're strategic about the elements that you submit, right? And lastly, like I said earlier, I definitely encourage you to connect with any institution that you're interested in. But of course, if you connect with TCNJ, we can meet again. That is our admissions website at the bottom, admissions.tcnj.edu. And if you click on the visit tab right on our site, you can see all the different events that we're planning. We also are very active on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So we're more than happy to connect with you in whatever way works for you. I'm more than happy to take some questions if students have posted them in the chat. So feel free to ask any questions that you might have, or if anybody is brave enough to turn off their mic. I'm not sure if that's permissible, Christy. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them on in the chat.
Yes, so they don't have the ability to turn off their mute.
There we go.
Off. So if there's any questions, please use that Q&A button at the bottom or top of your screen, wherever it's located for you. And while we're waiting to see if anyone has any questions, if there's any last things that you want to plug, you're welcome to do so now while we're waiting.
Sure, yes. Well, I do also just want to make sure that you all have my email. So let me make sure that that is in the chat. Definitely feel free to reach out with any questions about the application process. My travel is still in full gear, but I try to be on my email as quickly as possible. So please email me with any questions that you have, and really come visit, really visit the schools that you're considering, because it's just the best way to know. It's just the best way to know. So definitely take advantage of those events virtually and on campus as you can.
Okay, well, so far, it looks like there's a Q&A. You have a question there from Kirsten.
Oh, it was actually a very nice compliment. So thank you so much, Kirsten. I think that's how I'm saying your name. Who was thanking me. Kirsten, you can feel free to email me if you'd like to set up an event with TCNJ and your students. I'd be very happy to do that. So thanks for being here today.
So they want to know more about, TCNJ.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, perfect.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We have to do it through the Q&A button.
Yes.
Does anyone else need or have any questions before we wrap up? If you do, please use that Q&A button. Otherwise, we will wrap up here just in a moment. Give you a little time to think about it. I'm going to put some stuff in the chat too. This is recorded, so of course you're welcome to grab this and all the other sessions at StriveScan's website. And it's at StriveScan/New Jersey. And I'm going to put that in the chat as well again.
So a question just came in. This is a good one. How do internships apply to applications for high school students? And I will say we definitely value internships. You know, if a student had the opportunity to have an internship, that's wonderful. If they did not, that's also okay, right? So we're really seeing internships as opportunities for students to strengthen their skills in a particular area, right? So in particular, if a student, say, is applying as a communications major, and they had the opportunity to intern at their town magazine or town paper, that's awesome, right? And it's showing us how that student, one, is super proactive, right? Which is excellent. And then two, is using that opportunity to think about how the skills they're learning in the classroom apply to this internship. So we're viewing them in a similar way, I would say, to leadership or, you know, high involvement, a high leadership position. But one that is especially related to their academic interest is always really interesting to us. We also, you know, view jobs similarly. I know that there are a lot of students who work while they're in high school. You know, don't shy away from talking that up on your extracurricular activity resume, because it certainly shows us the way that you have taken the initiative to support yourself, maybe, you know, help support your family. So we also value, you know, the work ethic in that as well. Great question.
Very good question. Okay, great. Well, that was a fantastic presentation. I also enjoyed it, so thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much.
Jenny, we're lucky to have you here, and everyone that was watching, very lucky. So a few reminders: if you are watching this live, when you leave, there is going to be a link for a quick 5-question survey. Of course, we appreciate any feedback you can provide. We encourage you to check back to see about signing up for more in the future. And again, you can find this among other ones at strivescan.com/New Jersey. And with that, thank you again, Jenny. And thank you to everyone who's watching this live and who is watching this recording. With that, best of luck and have a good night.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Bye.